माते वयद्भरसे अप्रधानो जन्म जन्म भायसे चक्षसे च वयो वयो जरसे जरसे यत्प्रधानः पर्यना विषुरूपो जियासि विषुरूपो जियासि।
Unutterably effaced, no one and none, a vanished vestige, like a violet trace, a faint record, merely of a self now past. She was a point in the unknowable.
माते वयद्भरसे अप्रधानो जन्म जन्म भायसे चक्षसे च वयो वयो जरसे जरसे यत्प्रधानः पर्यना विषुरूपो जियासि विषुरूपो जियासि।
Okay, good morning. We've been reading in Book 7 about Savitri's Yoga, Canto 6, Nirvana, and the all-negating Absolute. I just want to just check again if somebody knows where we left off, has a marker. Do you? No? Do you see where we left off? Excuse me? I'm thinking we finish the canto also, yeah? Okay. Okay. That's what I'm thinking also, that we finished. So, Savitri has the experience of nirvana, which Sri Aurobindo has also described in his letters of his experience when he had sat with his guru early on in his sadhana, Lele, and in 3 days had silenced his mind completely. And then he entered into this into this state in which the world seemed just like a kind of a movie playing before him, empty of reality, empty of significance, just like a show continuing to play, but no sense of reality in it. And here it's described quite vividly of people appearing as if they're puppets, like in a puppet show, just playing, kind of empty of reality, and her own self also, no initiative taking place. She's not initiating any thought or action. It's all just happening before her consciousness. And just towards the end of the canto, there are the beginning hints of this experience changing into something else in which it's not just a void, not just an emptiness, but it's still unnameable, unknowable something, but potentially something positive. Just towards in the last kind of lines of the canto on page 549, it says, this is about 2/3 of the way down, even now her splendid being might flame back out of the silence and the nullity, a gleaming portion of the all-wonderful, a power of some all-affirming absolute, a shining mirror of the eternal truth, to show to the one in all its manifest face, to the souls of men their deep identity. Or she might wake into God's quietude, beyond the cosmic day and cosmic night, and rest appeased in his white eternity. But this was now unreal or remote or covered in the mystic fathomless blank. In infinite nothingness was the ultimate sign, or else the real was the unknowable. A lonely absolute negated all. It effaced the ignorant world from its solitude and drowned the soul in its everlasting peace. So we get some hints that there might be something positive in this unknowable, in this void, which is something completely separate from the universe, from the manifestation. It's outside of the manifest. But what it is not entirely clear. It seems to be a void, and that experience of it being a void is still kind of dominant, but she still hasn't kind of disappeared into some void. Still, there's something, some remnant left of her sense of being. So now we enter into the next canto, and here the experience will change more radically, where she will experience this void as something else, as the source of all. And it will at the same time be united with that all. It won't be separate. So let's read through the canto first, and then we'll go back afterwards and look at it in more detail. So let's start at this side this time. We didn't finish here.
Canto 7, the discovery of the cosmic spirit and the cosmic consciousness. In the little hermitage in the forest heart, in the sunlit and the moonlight and the dark, the daily human life went plodding on, even as before with its small and changing works, and its spare outward body of routine and happy quiet of ascetic peace. The old beauty smiled of the terrestrial scene. She too was her old gracious self to men. The angel mother clutched her child to her breast, pressing her close in her environing arms, as if the earth ever the same could forever keep. The living spirit and body in her clasp, as if death were not there, nor end, nor change. A costume only to read outward signs, none saw aught new in her, none divined her state. They saw a person where was only God's vast, still being on a mighty nothingness. To all she was the same perfect Savitri, a greatness and a sweetness and a light pour out from her upon her little world. Life showed to all the same familiar face. Her acts followed the all unaltered round. She spoke the words that she was wont to speak, and did the things that she had always done. Her eyes looked out on earth's unchanging face. Around her soul's muteness, all moved as all. A vacant consciousness watched from within, empty of all but bare reality.
Thank you.
There was no will behind the word and act, no thought formed in her brain to guide the speech. An impersonal emptiness walked and spoke in her. Something perhaps unfelt, unseen, unknown, guarded the body for its future work. Or nature moved in her old stream of force. Perhaps she bore, made conscious in her breast, the miraculous nihil, origin of our souls, and source and sum of the vast world's events, the womb and grave of thought, a cipher of God, a zero circle of being's totality. It used her speech and acted in her acts. It was beauty in her limbs life in her breath. The original mystery wore her human face. Thus was she lost within to separate self. Her mortal ego perished in God's night. Only a body was left, the ego's shell, afloat mid drift and foam of the world sea, a sea of dream watched by a motionless sense, in a figure of unreal reality.
Thank you.
An impersonal foresight could already see in the unthinking knowledge of the spirit. Even now it seemed nigh done, inevitable. The individual die, the cosmos pass. These gone, the transcendental grow a myth. The Holy Ghost without a Father and Son, or a substratum of what once had been, being that never will to bear a world, restored to its original loneliness, impassive, sole, silent, intangible. Yet all was not extinct in this deep loss. The being travelled not towards nothingness. There was some high surpassing secrecy, and when she sat alone with Satyavan, her moveless mind with his thought searched and strove. In the hush of the profound and intimate night, she turned to the face of a veiled, voiceless truth. Hid in the dumb recesses of the heart, or waiting beyond the last peak climbed by thought, unseen itself it sees the struggling world, and prompts our quest, but cares not to be found. Out of that distant vast came a reply.
Thank you.
Something unknown, unreached, inscrutable, sent down the messages of its bodiless light, cast lightning flashes of a thought not ours, crossing the immobile silence of her mind. In its might of irresponsible sovereignty, it seized on speech to give those flamings shape, made beat the heart of wisdom in a word, and spoke immortal things through mortal lips. Or listening to the sages of the woods, in question and in answer broke from her high strange revealings impossible to men. Something or someone secret and remote took hold of her body for his mystic use. Her mouth was seized to channel ineffable truths. Knowledge unthinkable found an utterance. Astonished by a new enlightenment, invaded by a streak of the absolute, they marveled at her, for she seemed to know what they had only glimpsed at times afar. These thoughts were formed not in her listening brain. Her vacant heart was like a stringless harp. Impassive, the body claimed not its own voice, but let the luminous greatness through it pass. A dual power or being's occult poles still acted, nameless and invisible. Her divine emptiness was their instrument.
Thank you.
Inconscient nature dealt with the world it had made, and using still the body's instruments, slipped through the conscious void she had become. The superconscient mystery, through that void, missioned its word to touch the thoughts of men. As yet, this great impersonal speech was rare. But now, the unmoving wide spiritual space in which her mind survived, tranquil and bare, admitted a traveler from the cosmic breadths. A thought came through, draped as an outer voice. It called not for the witness of the mind. It called not to the hushed receiving heart. It came direct to the pure perception seat, and only center now of consciousness. If center could be where all seemed only space, no more shut in by body's walls and gates, her being, a circle without circumference, already now surpassed all cosmic bounds, and more spread into infinity. This being was its own unbounded world, a world without form or feature or circumstance. It had no ground, no wall, no roof of thought, yet saw itself and looked on all around in a silence motionless and illimitable. There was no person there, no centered mind, no seat of feeling on which beat events, or objects wrought and shaped reaction stress. There was no motion in this inner world. All was a still and even infinity. In her, the unseen, the unknown waited his hour.
Thank you.
But now she sat by sleeping Satyavan, awake within, and the enormous night surrounded her with the unknowables vast. A voice began to speak from her own heart, that was not hers, yet mastered thought and sense. As it spoke, all changed within her and without. All was, all lived, she felt all being one. The world of unreality ceased to be. There was no more a universe built by mind, convicted as a structure or a sign. A spirit, a being saw created things and cast itself into unnumbered forms and was what it saw and made. All now became an evidence of one stupendous truth, a truth in which negation had no place, a being and a living consciousness, a stark and absolute reality. There the unreal could not find a place. The sense of unreality was slain. There all was conscious, made of the infinite. All had a substance of eternity.
Thank you.
Yet this was the same indecipherable. It seemed to cast from it universe like a dream, vanishing forever into an original void. But this was no more some vague ubiquitous point or a cipher of vastness in unreal naught. It was the same, but now no more seemed far to the living clasp of her recovered soul. It was herself. It was the self of all. It was the reality of existing things. It was the consciousness of all that lived and felt and saw. It was timelessness and time. It was the bliss of formlessness and form. It was all love and the one beloved's arms. It was sight and thought in one all-seeing mind. It was joy of being on the peaks of God. She passed beyond time into eternity, slipped out of space and became the infinite. Her being rose into unreachable heights and found no end of its journey in the self. It plunged into the unfathomable deeps and found no end to the silent mystery that held all world within one lonely breast, yet harbored all creation's multitudes.
Thank you.
She was all vastness and one measureless point. She was a height beyond heights, a depth beyond depths. She lived in the everlasting and was all that harbors death and bears the wheeling hours. All contraries were true in one huge spirit, surpassing measure, change, and circumstance. An individual, one with cosmic self in the heart of the transcendence miracle and the secret of world personality, was the creator and the Lord of all. Mind was a single, innumerable look upon itself and all that he became. Life was his drama, and the vast a stage. The universe was his body, God its soul. All was one single immense reality, all its innumerable phenomenon. Her spirit saw the world as living God. It saw the One and knew that all was He. She knew Him as the Absolute's self-space, one with herself and ground of all things here, in which the world wanders, seeking for the truth, guarded behind its face of ignorance. She followed him through the march of endless time.
Thank you.
All nature's happenings were events in her. The heartbeats of the cosmos were her own. All beings thought and felt and moved in her. She inhabited the vastness of the world. Its distances were her nature's boundaries, its closenesses her own life intimacies. Her mind became familiar with its mind. Its body was her body's larger frame, in which she lived and knew herself in it, one, multitudinous in its multitudinous. She was a single being, yet all things. The world was her spirit's wide circumference. The thoughts of others were her intimates, their feelings close to her universal heart, their bodies her many bodies kin to her. There was no more herself, but all the world. Out of the infinities all came to her, into the infinity's sentience she spread. Infinity was her own natural home.
Thank you.
Nowhere she dwelt, her spirit was everywhere. The distant constellations wheeled round her. Earth saw her born, all were his colonies. The greater words of life and mind were hers. All nature reproduced her in its lines. Its movements were large copies of her own. She was a single self of all these selves. She was in them and they were all in her. This first was an immense identity in which her own identity was lost. She seemed herself was an image of the whole. She was subconscient life of tree and flower, the outbreak of the honeyed buds of spring. She burned in the passion and splendor of the rose. She was the red heart, the passion flower, the dream white of the lotus in its pool. Out of the subconscient life she climbed to mind. She was thought and the passion of the world's heart. She was the Godhead hid in the heart of man. She was the climbing of his soul into God. The cosmos flowered in her. She was its bed. She was time and the dream of God in time. She was space and the wideness of his days. From this she rose where time and space were not. The superconscient was her native air. Infinity was her moment's natural space. Eternity looked out from her on time.
Thank you. So we'll go back to the beginning of the canto. Do you want to?
In the little hermitage in the forest heart, in the sunlight and the moonlight and the dark, the daily human life went plodding on, even as before, with its small unchanging works and its bare outward body of routine and happy quiet of ascetic peace. The old beauty smiled of the terrestrial scene. She too was her old gracious self to men. The ancient mother clutched her child to her breast, pressing her close in her environing arms, as if earth, ever the same, could forever keep the living spirit and body in her clasp, as if death were not there, nor end, nor change. Accustomed only to read outward signs, none saw aught new in her, none divined her state. They saw a person where was only God's vast, a still being or mighty nothingness. To all she was the same perfect Savitri, a greatness and a sweetness and a light poured out from her upon her little world. Life showed to all the same familiar face. Her acts followed the old unaltered round. She spoke the words that she was wont to speak, and did the things that she had always done. Her eyes looked out on earth's unchanging face. Around her soul's muteness, all moved as of old. Awakened consciousness watched from within, empty of all but bare reality.
Okay, thank you. We'll pause there for a minute. So after describing Savitri's inner state, her experience of nirvana, Sri Aurobindo brings us back again to the setting in which this is taking place. And we get a view again of Savitri from outside, from the perspective of those looking on her from around her, the other ascetics in the hermitage, her family, her husband, his parents. So to all of them, she seems the same. She's still the same perfect Savitri, still tending to their needs, still this lovely young woman. But her experience is radically altered. She no longer senses her individual self. She is just moving there among them, but she's not initiating any movement. It's just all happening as it was before. But she is now kind of this vacant emptiness, perhaps observing, watching this unfold. And Sri Aurobindo reminds us too of the larger context in which this is happening when he says, as if death were not there, nor end, nor change. He reminds us too that Satyavan's life is approaching its end. He says, so life showed to all the same familiar face. Her acts followed the old, unaltered round. She spoke the words that she was wont to speak, that she was used to speaking, and did the things that she had always done. Her eyes looked out on earth's unchanging face. Around her soul's muteness, all moved as of old. A vacant consciousness watched from within, empty of all, but bare reality. So we continue. You tell me which lines? Yeah, she's living in a hermitage with ascetics. So they have a very simple existence. So this is the spare outward body. There's nothing, opulent about this life. They're just there in their heaped houses, tending the fire, getting the firewood, perhaps collecting herbs and things from the forest to eat, fruits and vegetables. So this is their spare outward body of routine and happy quiet of ascetic peace. Very quiet and peaceful existence. Yeah. So this ancient mother, this mother of nature, of the earth mother, so she's still holding Savitri and all of this in her arms. So she continues moving, carrying on this kind of peaceful existence of nature, still holding Savitri, even though she has attained this high consciousness or this vacant consciousness, but she's still holding her and her nature and carrying it in its usual rounds and routines of her life. That is not changing. I think so, yeah. It's the mother, it's the ancient mother of existence, but here it's emphasizing that physical earth mother, I think. So we can continue here. Anandi. On the second line from the bottom.
Sorry?
Second line from the bottom, there was no will.
Yeah. There was no will behind the word and act, no thought form in her brain, no guide the speech. An impersonal emptiness walked and spoke in her. Something perhaps unfelt, unseen, unknown, guarded the body for its future work, or nature moving her all stream of force. Perhaps she bore made conscious in her breast the miraculous nihil origin of all the souls, and source and sum of the vast world's events. The woman grave of thought, a cipher of God, a zero circle of being's totality. It used her speech and act in her acts. It was beauty in her limbs, life on her breath. The original mystery were her human face. Thus was the loss within to separate self. Her mortal ego perished in God's night. Only a body was left, the ego's shelf, afloat mid drift and foam on the world sea. A sea of dream watched by emotion sense, in a figure and a real reality.
Thank you. We return here a little bit more to Savitri's subjective experience, but he's still kind of, Sri Aurobindo is describing it still in kind of as a impersonal narrator. He's saying, and describing that experience of this emptiness. There was no will behind the word and act, no thought formed in her brain to guide the speech. An impersonal emptiness walked and spoke in her. And then here also we get a hint of something positive, a reality behind that emptiness, something perhaps unfelt, unseen, unknown, guarded the body for its future work. Or nature moved in her old stream of force. Perhaps she bore, made conscious in her breast, the miraculous nihil, origin of our souls, and source and sum of the vast world's events, the womb and grave of thought, a cipher of God, a zero circle of being's totality. We get some sense of the paradoxical nature of this emptiness, which is at the same time a whole, a circle of being's totality, a zero circle. It's at once a zero and a totality. And Savitri is carrying this somehow within her, this miraculous nihil, which is the source, but also the grave of thought and existence. But then it also, we see, is using her. It used her speech and acted in her acts. It was beauty in her limbs, life in her breath. The original mystery wore her human face. Yeah. It's nihil, but it's at the same time, it's a mystery which we can't really say it's nothing or all or what it is. We can't really say. That's why it's a paradoxical thing. It's a mystery. It's as if moving and acting in her, but what it is, it cannot be fathomed. It's outside of time and space. A sea of dream watched by a motionless sense in a figure of unreal reality. So let's continue.
An impersonal foresight could already see. In the unthinking knowledge of the spirit, even now it seemed nigh done, inevitable. The individual die, the cosmos pass. These gone, the transcendental grew a myth, the Holy Ghost without the Father and Son, or a substratum of what once had been, being that never willed to bear a world, restored to its original loneliness. Impassive, soul, silent, intangible. Yet all was not extinct in this deep loss. The being traveled not towards nothingness. There was some high surpassing secrecy, and when she sat alone with Satyavan, her moveless mind with his that searched and strove, in the hush of the profound and intimate night, she turned to the face of a veiled, voiceless truth, hid in the dumb recesses of the heart, or waiting beyond the last peak climbed by thought. Unseen itself, it sees the struggling world, and prompts our quest, but cares not to be found. Out of that distant vast came a reply.
Thank you. I think Sri Aurobindo keeps reminding us, in a sense, of this paradoxical nature of this experience, its emptiness, and yet its fullness, its completeness. And he seems to kind of shift back and forth between these two different aspects of its nature in his narrative as he describes it. So in the beginning, here he's again seems to be emphasizing its emptiness, its nothingness. Even now it seemed nigh done, inevitable. The individual die, the cosmos pass. These gone, the transcendental grew a myth, the Holy Ghost without the Father and Son, or a substratum of what once had been, being that never willed to bear a world, restored to its original loneliness, impassive, soul, silent, intangible. There's some enormity of that experience of emptiness where everything seems swallowed up in it. But then again, he'll come and say, but no, she didn't enter into that nothingness. Yet all was not extinct in this deep loss. The being traveled not towards nothingness. There was some high surpassing secrecy. So there's something there, but it's a mystery. It can't be caught. It can't be defined. In the lines that follow, it describes it nicely. Unseen itself, it sees the struggling world and prompts our quest, but cares not to be found. Out of that distant vast came a reply. Read it. Yeah, that's the paradoxical nature of this thing. He's stressing here that emptiness aspect of it, separate from the universe, as if it's aloof, has nothing to do with it. It's beyond it completely. So into that, she's experiencing that in its fullness, and he's describing that experience in which it's completely empty, completely separate from the universe, having nothing to do with it. That also is a reality, one aspect of the truth and of that. But there's another side, which he can only describe these things kind of alternatively, or in some sentences he'll combine them in a way, but it's something that's beyond thought and beyond description. So what it is, we cannot truly say, but Sri Aurobindo is somehow describing it, but he goes back and forth between these two aspects. But it's not two, it's one experience which is sort of beyond all thought, beyond all description. Okay, so you're talking about these two aspects, the cosmic spirit and cosmic consciousness. So in a way, yeah, I think they reflect that. The cosmic spirit, though, as I see it, is a being, is perhaps the being, the one being. And the universe, as he'll say, I think later, is kind of its body, its form that it takes. But it is not or maybe it's identified with it, but it is not limited by that form. by the universe.
Now, that's
Now,
why it has to be unlimited to be the cosmic spirit.
right.
And then to have the cosmic consciousness, you have to be unlimited.
The cosmic consciousness is, let's say, its consciousness. Right? And she will participate in that and experience, but I think she will experience both. She's experiencing that spirit and the consciousness, which is its activity and its manifestation.
She feels it coming out of that spirit because she
Yes.
hears this voice or downloads
Right.
what is coming.
Right.
And then she manifests it.
So the cosmic consciousness, which is going to be described more as we go on, she's going to feel that. And in that consciousness, it's not limited by any individual, right? So then she feels as if flowing in the sap of the trees and in, the smell of the flowers and whatever is, she's identifying with that. So
but it seems it's so subtle that the people around her cannot even feel it.
Right.
So
right.
it is,
This is an experience. It's a reality of being, right? That there is something like this cosmic spirit and there is this cosmic consciousness which is one in all things. She can participate in that. We all can participate in that consciousness, feel it, experience it ourselves. But outwardly, to others who are not participating in that, well, things just go on as they always have. They can't see it unless they're also experiencing that. They're one and different at the same time. Okay, I mean there are two different aspects to them. Ultimately, they are one and the same thing. This outward consciousness is also that spirit. But that spirit is not limited by what's in its consciousness, what's playing out, manifesting in the universe. It is beyond that. That is why it comes on the heels of this experience of this emptiness and void and separation from all, where all just seems an unreality. And that alone seems real. Perhaps Sri Aurobindo is describing something of how things are seen in the overmind consciousness. There are different aspects of reality that are lived, experienced, as if they are separate, but yet at the same time there is this underlying oneness that holds them together. But it's in that that ability of the consciousness to play out different aspects of itself that gives rise to the universe and gives rise to the diversity of existences that are here. If it was all just oneness, then we wouldn't have this diversity, all these many different existences, all this play of consciousness. Yeah. Yeah, there's a unity in the diversity that becomes more prominent as we go higher and higher in overmind towards supermind. And then in supermind, somehow the two fuse, the manyness and the oneness and the nothingness and all, right. All these things fuse into one grand experience. Let's continue. Did you read?
Something unknown, unreached, inscrutable, sent down the messages of its bodiless light, cast lightning flashes of a thought not ours, crossing the immobile silence of her mind. In its might of irresponsible sovereignty, it seized on speech to give those flamings shape, made beat the heart of wisdom in a word, and spoke immortal things through mortal lips. Or, listening to the sages of the woods, in question and in answer broke from her, high strange revealings impossible to men, something or someone secret and remote, took hold of her body for his mystic use. Her mouth was seized to channel ineffable truth. Knowledge unthinkable found an utterance. Astonished by a new enlightenment, invaded by a streak of the Absolute, they marveled at her, for she seemed to know what they had only glimpsed at times afar. These thoughts were formed not in her listening brain. Her vacant heart was like a stringless harp. Impassive, the body claimed not its own voice, but let the luminous greatness through it pass. A dual power at being's occult poles still acted, nameless and invisible. Her divine emptiness was their instrument.
Thank you. Let's pause. I think here we're getting a clear description of this cosmic spirit. just in the previous passage towards the end, it says, she turned to the face of a veiled, voiceless truth, hid in the dumb recesses of the heart, or waiting beyond the last peak climbed by thought. Unseen itself, it sees the struggling world. And then out of that kind of secrecy, mystery, unreachable by thought, unconceivable, something unknown, unreached, inscrutable, sent down the messages of its bodiless light. And so here too, you see how this vacant emptiness has now transformed into something still unknowable, but is able to send down messages of its light, of its all-knowing knowledge, casting lightning flashes of a thought not ours, what she can now receive because her mind is silent and not generating any thoughts of its own, any movements. In this absolute silence and purity of being of this experience of nirvana, then this can send down its messages into that silence and quietude and sees her speech, her mind, and speak through her its greater knowledge and wisdom. It seized on speech to give those flaming shape, made beat the heart of wisdom in a word, and spoke immortal things through mortal lips. And then we're brought back to the more concrete image of her sitting in the forest with the ascetics, the sages, sitting around in circle, in question and answer. She speaks to them and reveals then this greater knowledge coming out of this mystery and secrecy beyond time, beyond space. Her mouth was seized to channel ineffable truths, knowledge unthinkable found in utterance. Astonished by a new enlightenment, invaded by a streak of the absolute. It's the absolute reality seizing on her speech, speaking through her. Yeah. Yes. Hmm. Right. Hmm. Yeah, that may well be. It's the way he's describing it here. It's, this absolute, perhaps the cosmic spirit, but it's certainly beyond space and time. It's from the ultimate mystery of existence. It's coming through. In his prose works, he may describe this as a mind of light, something from the supermind. Yeah, I think Sri Aurobindo, even in these very words that we're reading, are almost seem to be coming from this same source. She's just, like a vessel, a pure vessel in which this higher knowledge is passed through to the world outside, to people around. Which also says something about that reality, that it's not completely aloof or indifferent to the lives of men, or it wouldn't speak to them in this way. Yeah, Sri Aurobindo had that experience of first this nirvana and then this cosmic consciousness while he was imprisoned at the beginning of the 20th century, 1908, 1910, in that area. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But so she's speaking of his description, his writings of the mind of light come at the very end of his life, I think in 1950 even. And he describes, as she said, it as kind of the supramentalization of the physical mind. Okay, so the physical mind is the mind that we normally utilize in order to deal with the world, right? And that is become supramentalized, and it expresses then that supramental consciousness. Yeah. But in a way, that's kind of like what's happening here. It's her outer mind is speaking, and it's expressing these, let's say, supramental truths. Because they're coming from beyond mind. He's saying they're coming from above the mind, beyond the last peak climbed by thought. They're coming from that ultimate source. And they're seizing her physical mind and utilizing it. Right, right. And yet in her own experience, perhaps, you know, she hasn't had the complete fulfilled experience of this physical mind being transformed in this way, because it seems like for her it's still as if she's kind of an empty vessel in which something is speaking through her, but it's coming from some source far above. You know, so maybe still she hasn't had that complete experience. Right. But I think now we will stop with that speculations of these ultimate experiences.
Yet all was not extinct in this deep loss. The being traveled not towards nothingness. There was some high, surpassing secrecy, and when she sat alone with Satyavan, her moveless mind within that searched and strove in the hush of the profound and intimate night, she turned to the face of a veiled, voiceless truth, hid in the dumb recess of the heart, or waiting beyond the last peak climbed by soul.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.